Okay, so it is week 12 in CIT 93, my favorite JavaScript. So in this week, I just want to take a little week look ahead to the weeks coming. Here we are at the last day before we move into April. Okay, so we have week 12, week 13, and then the all important spring break. And then 14, 15, of course, and then the end, right? With the tech interview ending here. I do want to say a word. I've been through a few spring breaks, and here's what I notice with some students is once they take a break, like they can't get their head back in the content. It just seems hard for them. So try not to be that and see if you can, even if you are traveling, do some coding, right? I will make sure that week 14 is available before I head out. There will be no work due for that. But we are moving into probably what I would say is some of my favorite content. And I'm actually going to lean upon a YouTuber to do the lectures because I think he does a much better job than I do. And that's good. But before I get there, back to here. Now is the time. The weekly schedules, as far as coming in to see me, is, as you know, the tech interviews have already started. Well, you may not know, but they've already started. Well into at this point, well into swing, I suppose I could say. And I'm excited for more of you. I guess that's my point. More of you to sign up before spring break. That'd be my other suggestion. There are 2 classes signing up. I'm encouraging both to try to get their names in before spring break. Now, why is that? Well, for one thing, you'll have it over with. It'll feel good. And the other thing is that remember that after spring break, there's only 1 week until you can no longer do but one session. Okay, so that's an important thing to understand. So if you think you might want to try a different, more than one session, because you get 2 shots at it, you definitely want to be earlier in my schedule. And it's just good. Again, go into spring break feeling like I got it done. So now is the time. Okay, like I said, I think I've had 3 tech interviews I've done for this course. It's been good. I know students get nervous. I get that. How do you prepare? If you've written the code for this class authentically, you're in good shape. But what's an object? What's an array? How do you write a loop? How do you write conditional code? How do you update the page? Those are really good things to know how to do. Okay. All right, so I just added in here the week 11 solution. Now, one thing I want to say, and I'm going to say this down here, is on the OOP. So one of the things I feel like I didn't do well, and actually I don't feel like I didn't do it well, and I will do it better on my rewrite, was when in my class, when I said this total, and calling the method, so on the constructor, so when you call new, these things run, is not really the best, especially in total, because I also called it this total, and some of you, it can cause problems based on the way you're rendering the table, in that you will see some of the function, the logic inside of here, right? So in this case, I'd like to give a shout out to Noah because he gave me a really good example here. Wrong one. Hold on, let me grab that one. So I could tell by just looking at, and this is Noah's example. Noah, I hope you're okay with this. But in this case, and I didn't even talk about some other important topics around OOP, like getters and setters, and some of the other theory of encapsulation and other topics, because we really just use it in order to set up our data. But in this case, I definitely could have named things better, right? So a getter and a setter. So this would be setters because we're setting values within here. But also this idea that I called it total when I had a method, right? This is definitely the better way to do that. So if you're running into render issues, which we end up fixing those render issues in this week as well. But I would just tell you that when I redo this class over summer, that's definitely one of the things I will change. I will probably maybe spend a little more time, although I did look at my content on the OOP, and it was definitely quite a bit. But in this case, we're just getting an overview. But, when I don't do well, I admit it. So I could do better, and I will. Now, after, and by the way, I'll come back to this in a minute. Here's the other thing I want to say. I want to say a word about your decision app and last week's conversation about noting, giving content for why you're using things is important. And here's a fairly common thing that I saw. Okay. Many students would like go over and find methods on filters and go, just, I'm going to use those, right? So, like maybe an include, or maybe a find, or maybe a filter, or maybe one of these other ones. And it's not that it's wrong, but for students who are new to coding, here's why it's definitely a little more challenging to use. And in this case, I'm going to use find, but this could be true for any of the content on these methods. Is that when you set a breakpoint in your code and you're actually going to watch this thing run, because here I have a dot find, and by the way, it's finding on an array of objects, which, by the way, just to be clear, these are separate data structures, right? This is an array, and inside the array are object literals, okay? So we've mashed them up, but they're not always mashed up. They're standalone data structures in and of themselves. All right. So anyway, we set a target ID. We're looking for this one. And so the find will absolutely do this, okay? But here's why I don't necessarily, especially for students new in coding, use them. Because when I hit my breakpoint, I hit step into, you don't really see what's happening here. I mean, if you're willing to spend a moment going, okay, and looking at, okay, well, yeah, and, and spending time here, and it's flashing, but what's happening? Like, you can't see, you can't reason about what's happening. Now, when you drop down to the next line, it's like, okay, I got it. Okay, yep, found it. But this is why I generally recommend using what we've already used, because it gives you more expression and then therefore possibly more ways to troubleshoot it and then to extend your code if you want. Okay, so there's a place and a time for these for most students right now. I don't generally recommend them because it could make troubleshooting your code later. So that's why something like the for each here, you could write a regular loop. Knowing how to write a loop is a good thing, by the way. Harping back to the tech interview. So if I hit step in here, I can see now I'm running a for each on the array, right? So the for each is an array method. It's a looping method. It has a callback function inside of it, but it's looping over it. It has the reference, right? So the student is the reference to the object in the array. And I can see what it's doing. If, right, student in this case, right? So, by the way, student is the reference in the array. Students is the array in a global scope. So here I can see what the logic is doing. If student, there's specific object, because I'm going to iterate over all three, right, is triple equal to the ID, right, then it drops out as soon as it is. And you can see, like, immediately what happened there. Okay, boom, we're done. So that's, to me, much clearer. Oh, actually, no, we're not done. We're not done. We got to the end, and now we drive back through, right? Okay. So, and I was going to cover this one as well, which is the idea of using a arrow function with only one expression. And if you don't realize this, it actually will return that value. And if you're writing arrow functions and you're writing like this without really understanding what they're doing, it is hard to reason about, okay? So here's what I'm doing. I'm giving you a couple of examples of why I don't recommend using things that you can't really you don't really have an understanding of. But I also understand, because I've had a couple students do this, where they spent the time to really understand what that code was doing. And in that case, it's good to extend your knowledge if you're willing to spend the time to really understand it. Otherwise, when you go to modify your code, it definitely could make it a little more challenging. Okay? All right, so thoughts or comments or questions. I should have said and, but okay. Or, all right, and then reply to one student. So this week, I'm gonna update that render body again. This is from a prior semester, but I do, instead of using the object keys, because that can definitely be thrown off because of the order at which they iterate over. So, and then we get into writing async. So for the most part, and I'll talk about this in here, you're basically just writing that in your main.js. And take a few notes here. Learning how to understand and reason about asynchronous code is so, so important for extending your JavaScript knowledge that we have at this point. Okay. So you're going to watch this video, which is 24 minutes. Right, let's see. Right, so in this case, I just make you, oh, I'm so nice. I only make you do one in this case. But what I will look at is your notes. So I'll have you do notes, comment them out, and continue on. And Color Code, I just think he's awesome. I really enjoy him as a content creator around JavaScript. And then we will actually write some asynchronous code, okay? So I show you, I want you to write async workout, the idea of setting, in this case, a timer, right? Okay, so the rest of it, not a big surprise. The solution, so nice how I do provide that. And those of you that have been using it, you've been doing a good job updating that. And then here's your decision app, which I do show you in the course content, an overview of this one because I felt like it needed a little more data. And then the reviews, I've modified. These are now updated to, I've talked about this for the new UI, but also do make sure, and by the way, do make sure you follow this. If you don't follow this, we are starting some back-end work now to where we're capturing all the attempts, right? Because I have a feeling there's not more than one, more than several, who go almost to the end and then don't submit. And I want to know what these numbers are. And it's not that it's, because learning is learning, but it's not the idea either. You really want to actually submit this and show me you did it multiple times, which, by the way, we're starting to realize because of the way we're using authentication for this class, is not a bad thing to talk about, is that what we have is these access tokens that end up showing up if you go into your account. There's a setting in there, and if you have gone in and not completed it, there's actually going to be several of the FCC AI Canvas chat. You can delete them because every time you come back in, if you don't complete, that kind of tells you how many you've tried without submitting. I almost thought of having students tell me, but okay, I won't be mean. All right, so week 12. That's all I got. Hope you have a good one. Talk to you later.